Have you ever wondered what happens when a long-hidden secret is finally exposed? Imagine a wife who, on a night out, dresses provocatively to charm a lover, while her husband, completely unaware, believes she is just meeting friends. What seems like an ordinary night at the club, filled with passion and abandon, crumbles upon returning home. It is in the quiet of the early morning that reality hits with devastating force. When Laura walks into the house, the last thing she expects is to find Carlos awake, with a heavy gaze and a painful truth about to be revealed. In this plot of betrayal and secrets, the night of lust and deceit leads to an unexpected confrontation, forcing both to face decisions that could change their lives forever. What happens when the veil of infidelity falls and the weight of choices becomes impossible to ignore? Laura, a married woman, maintains a secret relationship with another man, leading a double life that her husband, Carlos, is unaware of. Laura lived a life of secrets and mysteries. Married to Carlos, a loving and dedicated man, she hid a dark side of her existence. Infidelity was not just an action, but a lifestyle for Laura. Every secret meeting, every hidden message, contributed to the web of lies she meticulously wove. It was like trying to balance spinning plates. One slip and everything could come crashing down. Laura's betrayal went beyond the physical. It was an emotional betrayal, a silent break of trust that Carlos could never imagine. To maintain this double life, Laura had to be cunning. She mastered the art of making excuses and plausible stories. Maybe she would say she was going to Pilates or a work meeting, when in fact, her destination was very different. Laura knew that a well-told lie needed details. A small comment about the Pilates instructor or a fictitious colleague from the office made everything more convincing. The key was never to falter, to keep the narrative consistent. Thus, she managed to deceive Carlos, who, unsuspecting, believed every word. Laura's situation exemplifies the devastating power of secrets in a relationship. A secret can start small, almost insignificant, but it grows, expands, and eventually takes over everything. Carlos, with his blind trust, didn't notice the subtle signs. A different perfume, a message quickly deleted, everything went unnoticed. Laura's decision to continue this double life reflected a deep dissatisfaction, something many people may experience, but few have the courage to face directly. Determined to impress her lover, Laura dresses in a revealing dress for a night out, hiding her intentions from Carlos. Laura was determined to make this night an unforgettable occasion. She spent hours preparing, choosing each detail with surgical precision. The revealing dress she chose was not just a piece of clothing, but a statement of intentions. With its daring neckline and fabric that hugged her curves, Laura knew she would capture everyone's attention at the club, especially her lovers. This preparation was almost a ritual for her, a moment of transition where she left behind being the dedicated wife to become the seductive and independent woman. As she left the room, Laura threw a quick smile at Carlos, who was distracted watching TV. "I'm meeting the girls, don't wait up for me," as she said, in a casual voice. Carlos, fully trusting his wife, just nodded, engrossed in the program. Laura knew the key to keeping her secret was in the normality of her actions. Without raising suspicions, she gave her husband a goodbye kiss and left, leaving behind the safety of her home and diving into the excitement of the night that awaited her. At the club, Laura felt alive. The pulsating lights, the loud music, and the attention she received made her forget, if only momentarily, the life she had at home. Meeting her lover in the middle of the crowd was like a game she loved to play. Each encounter was a chapter of a forbidden book she wrote in secret. For those who live a life of secrets, the adrenaline of not getting caught can be incredibly addictive. And so, Laura danced all night, aware she was playing with fire but unable to resist the flame. Laura makes up an excuse to leave home, letting Carlos believe she is going to a simple get-together with friends. That night, Laura knew she needed to be convincing. She invented an apparently innocent excuse, telling Carlos she was meeting her friends for a casual dinner. Carlos, unsuspecting, believed her readily. Laura knew the key to keeping her secret was in the simplicity of her lies. "Don't wait up, love, it might be late," as she said, throwing him a quick, carefree smile. Carlos's blind trust was part of the game, a game where every move Laura made had to be calculated with precision. Laura left the house with a sense of mission accomplished. She knew that to maintain the facade, it was essential not to raise suspicions. The way she said goodbye to Carlos was always careful, leaving no room for doubt. The decision to lie to him weighed on her conscience, but the adrenaline of the impending meeting with her lover outweighed any momentary remorse. In this context, betrayal was a burden Laura carried, but it also gave her a strange sense of power and control over her double life. As she walked toward the car, Laura took a deep breath, mentally preparing for the night. Deep down, she knew she was risking a lot, but the thrill of infidelity drove her. She thought of the excuses she would need to make the next day, the details she would need to remember not to contradict herself. For someone living a secret, memory and attention to detail are crucial. Every word spoken to Carlos had to be carefully chosen, every gesture had to be measured. The complexity of betrayal lay precisely in this, keeping the lie alive without ever leaving traces. At the club, Laura meets her lover and they indulge in moments of passion and fun, without thinking about the consequences. The club was in full swing when Laura arrived. The lights were flashing, the music was loud, and the atmosphere was brimming with energy. Her lover was waiting at the bar, a mischievous smile on his face as he saw her enter in the revealing dress. They greeted each other with a tight hug, full of ulterior motives. There, away from familiar eyes, Laura could give in to passion without reservations. Every touch, every kiss exchanged in the middle of the crowd was filled with desire, a stark contrast to the controlled life she had left at home. Laura and her lover danced all night, laughing and exchanging furtive caresses. Infidelity, in that environment, seemed less burdensome, almost acceptable. They got lost in the music and in each other's company, deliberately ignoring the possible consequences of their actions. Laura felt alive, euphoric, fueled by the adrenaline of the secret. Betrayal, which often felt like a burden, became an irresistible impulse in moments like these. For her, it was a temporary escape, a breach of freedom in a life of appearances. As the night progressed, Laura and her lover found a more secluded corner, where they could indulge in lust without being observed. The feeling of being with him, away from everything and everyone, was intoxicating. Laura knew that eventually, she would have to return to reality, face Carlos and the life they had built together. But that night, none of that mattered. She was immersed in the present, in every moment of pleasure she shared with her lover. The decision to continue on this dangerous path was, for now, something Laura refused to reconsider, leaving the repercussions to be dealt with later. Later that night, Laura returns home, confident that her secret is safe and that Carlos remains unaware of her betrayals. Laura arrived home in the middle of the night, trying to make as little noise as possible. The night at the club had been intense, and she still felt the adrenaline coursing through her body. Upon entering, she found the house shrouded in darkness and silence. Carlos, as always, slept soundly. Laura sighed with relief, sure that her secret remained intact. Removing the revealing dress and erasing the memories of the night was almost a ritual, a transition back to the life she pretended was the only one she knew. Walking down the hallway, Laura mentally reviewed the excuses she would use if Carlos woke up and asked questions. Her mind was sharp, prepared for any eventuality. But this preparation, paradoxically, gave her a false sense of security. Betrayal, for Laura, had become a delicate dance of omissions and lies. She prided herself on her ability to keep everything under control, believing that her decision to carry on this double life was justified by the pleasure and freedom she experienced in her furtive moments. In the bedroom, as she lay down next to Carlos, Laura looked at him for a moment, feeling a pang of guilt that she quickly pushed away. She knew that infidelity was a double-edged sword, but until then, the thrill of the night seemed worth the risk. Carlos stirred slightly, still oblivious to his wife's secrets. Laura closed her eyes, trying to find peace in sleep. Deep down, she knew she was playing with fire, but continued to convince herself she was in control, ignoring the signs that this precarious balance could collapse at any moment. Upon entering the house, Laura is surprised by Carlos, who is awake and seems to know more than she imagined. When Laura entered the house that night, she did not expect to find Carlos awake. The clock showed late hours, and she counted on the usual confidence that he would be sleeping. But when she opened the door, she was greeted by an unexpected sight. Carlos was sitting in the living room, with a serious expression and a piercing look. We need to talk," he said in a voice that left no room for excuses. Laura's heart skipped a beat, a mix of surprise and fear running through her veins. She realized that something had changed, that perhaps her well-kept secret was no longer so secret. Carlos's look was different from what Laura was used to. There was no anger, but a deep sadness mixed with a sense of betrayal. He gestured for her to sit down and Laura obeyed, feeling her legs tremble. The atmosphere was tense, loaded with unspoken words and feelings long suppressed. Laura tried to gather her thoughts, searching for a plausible explanation, but something told her that this time it wouldn't be so easy. The silence stretched, each second feeling like an eternity, until Carlos finally broke it. "I know you've been seeing someone," Carlos said, his voice trembling slightly. Laura felt a chill run down her spine. The truth was out, naked and raw, in front of them. The facade she had so carefully built was collapsing. Laura opened her mouth to respond, to deny or explain, but the words wouldn't come. The look in Carlos's eyes, full of pain and disappointment, was unbearable. Laura felt trapped, without a clear way out. It was as if everything she had built, her life, her marriage, her lies, was collapsing in an instant, and she was powerless to stop it. Carlos confronts Laura, revealing that he discovered her infidelity and demanding explanations for her actions. Carlos's voice was firm, but there was an unmistakable sadness in his tone. "I've known for a while," he began, looking Laura in the eyes. "But I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, that you wouldn't do this to us." Laura felt her face flush with shame and fear. The facade she had so carefully built was collapsing before her eyes. She tried to respond, to find words that could alleviate the situation, but her mind was blank. The confrontation she had feared for so long was happening, and she was unprepared. Carlos continued, detailing the small clues he had gathered over time. The late nights, the secretive messages, the unexplained absences, everything had finally come together in his mind. "I found the messages," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "You were careless with your phone." Laura felt her heart sink. The messages. She had tried to be careful, deleting conversations, but clearly, she had missed something. The feeling of exposure was overwhelming, and she realized there was no turning back. As Carlos spoke, his voice filled with pain and disappointment, Laura saw the depth of the wound she had caused. She had betrayed not just her husband's trust, but also the life they had built together. The look in Carlos's eyes was almost unbearable. It was as if he was seeing her for the first time, as someone he didn't recognize. Laura felt tears welling up, but she held them back, knowing that no amount of crying could undo the damage done. She was at a crossroads, where every word and action from that point forward would determine the future of their relationship. Faced with the truth, Carlos gives Laura an ultimatum: end the affair or their marriage. Carlos's voice took on a tone of finality, as if he had already made up his mind about the situation. "You have a choice to make," he said, looking at Laura with a mix of determination and sadness. "You end this affair now, or our marriage is over." The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and definitive. For the first time, Laura felt the full weight of her actions. The decision she had been postponing, ignoring, was now staring her in the face, demanding an immediate answer. Laura felt her chest tighten. She knew this moment would come, but she wasn't prepared for the harsh reality of it. The double life she had led, balancing the thrill of infidelity with the comfort of a stable home, was no longer sustainable. Carlos's ultimatum was a stark reminder that actions have consequences, and she was now faced with a choice that could change everything. The lover she had enjoyed fleeting moments of passion with was suddenly less appealing in the face of losing the life she had built with Carlos. As the silence stretched between them, Laura realized the magnitude of her decision. If she chose to stay with Carlos, it meant facing the guilt and rebuilding the trust she had shattered. If she chose her lover, it meant leaving behind a life of stability and facing the uncertainty of a new relationship born out of betrayal. The weight of the choice was crushing, and for a moment, Laura wished she could escape from it all. but she knew that running away was no longer an option. The moment of truth had arrived, and she had to make a decision that would define the rest of her life. Laura begins to reflect on the consequences of her actions and the pain she caused Carlos, realizing the gravity of her betrayal. In the silence that followed Carlos's ultimatum, Laura's thoughts were a whirlwind of regret and realization. The enormity of her betrayal began to sink in, and for the first time, she fully understood the pain she had inflicted on her husband. Every lie, every secret meeting, now seemed like a sharp knife twisting in the heart of their marriage. Laura felt a deep sense of remorse, a crushing weight of guilt that made it hard to breathe. She realized that her actions had not only hurt Carlos but had also shattered the trust and love that once bound them together. Laura's mind raced back to the moments they had shared as a couple. The laughter, the small gestures of affection, the plans for the future, all of it felt tainted by her infidelity. She had taken for granted the love and stability Carlos offered, trading it for fleeting moments of excitement. Now, faced with the possibility of losing everything, Laura felt the full impact of her choices. The realization that she might have destroyed something beautiful for something so fleeting and shallow was a bitter pill to swallow. As she looked at Carlos, who sat silently, waiting for her response, Laura felt a surge of emotion. She wanted to reach out to him, to apologize, to explain, but she knew that words alone could not heal the wound she had caused. The regret she felt was overwhelming, and for the first time, she questioned why she had made the choices she did. The allure of infidelity had seemed irresistible at the time, but now in the cold light of reality, it felt hollow and meaningless. Laura knew she had to face the consequences of her actions, but the path forward seemed fraught with uncertainty and pain. After much deliberation, Laura decides to end the affair and try to rebuild her marriage with Carlos, realizing the value of their relationship. Laura sat in the silence of the living room, her mind churning with the weight of Carlos's ultimatum and the gravity of her actions. The decision before her was monumental, a crossroads that would determine the future of her marriage and her life. As she reflected on the past and the love she had once felt for Carlos, a clarity began to emerge. She realized that the fleeting excitement of her affair could never compare to the depth and stability of her relationship with her husband. The realization was painful, but it brought a sense of resolve. With a deep breath, Laura turned to Carlos, her voice shaky but sincere. "I want to end the affair," as she said, her eyes meeting his. "I want to try to fix what I've broken." The words were heavy with meaning, a first step towards reconciliation. Laura knew it would not be easy. Rebuilding trust and mending the wounds would take time, patience, and a lot of effort. But she was willing to do whatever it took to regain Carlos's trust and salvage their marriage. The decision was not just about ending the affair, but about committing to a future where honesty and love would be the foundation. Carlos listened, his expression unreadable. The room felt charged with unspoken emotions, a mixture of relief, anger, and cautious hope. He knew that words alone were not enough, actions would speak louder. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with difficult conversations and emotional healing. But in Laura's eyes, he saw a glimmer of the woman he had fallen in love with, a woman who was genuinely remorseful and ready to make amends. With a sigh, Carlos nodded, signaling his willingness to try and work through the pain. As the night wore on, Laura and Carlos began the first of many conversations that would be needed to rebuild their relationship. They spoke of their feelings, their fears, and their hopes for the future. It was a tentative start, but it was a start nonetheless. Laura knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she was committed to facing them together with Carlos. She understood now more than ever the value of what they had and was determined not to let it slip away again. It was a long road to redemption, but for the first time in a long time, Laura felt a glimmer of hope for the future. Laura and Carlos begin the difficult journey of rebuilding their relationship, facing challenges and working towards a stronger bond. The days following Laura's confession were filled with a mixture of tension and cautious optimism. Both she and Carlos knew that healing from such a deep betrayal would not happen overnight. It would require time, effort, and a genuine commitment from both sides. Laura felt a renewed sense of purpose as she began to take steps to repair the damage she had caused. She ended all contact with her lover, determined to focus entirely on her marriage. The decision was not without its emotional struggles, but she knew it was the right thing to do. Carlos, on his part, struggled with conflicting emotions. He wanted to forgive Laura and move forward, but the pain of her betrayal was still raw. Trust, once broken, is not easily restored, and he found himself questioning her every action. Yet, despite the challenges, Carlos was willing to try. They began attending couples therapy, a neutral space where they could express their feelings and work through their issues. It was a difficult process, often bringing up painful memories and unresolved conflicts, but it was also a space for healing and understanding. As they navigated this new chapter, Laura and Carlos made an effort to reconnect on a deeper level. They spent more time together, engaging in activities they both enjoyed, and rediscovering the things that had brought them together in the first place. There were good days and bad days, moments of closeness and moments of distance. But through it all, they kept communicating, each small step forward a victory in itself. The journey was not just about forgiving and forgetting, it was about learning and growing, building a stronger foundation for the future. Laura found herself reflecting on the lessons she had learned from the experience. She realized the importance of honesty and communication in a relationship, and how easily these can be taken for granted. The affair had been a symptom of deeper issues, and facing those issues head-on was the only way to move forward. Laura and Carlos both acknowledged their mistakes and their role in the breakdown of their relationship. It was a painful but necessary process, one that brought them closer in a way they hadn't been for a long time. As time passed, the wounds began to heal, slowly but surely. There was still a long way to go, but Laura felt hopeful for the first time in months. She knew that the road to recovery would be long and fraught with challenges, but she was determined to walk it with Carlos. They had both changed through this experience, and in a way, it had made them stronger. Laura was committed to making their marriage work, not out of obligation, but out of a renewed understanding and appreciation for the bond they shared. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with the promise of a deeper, more honest love.